we find her right now at St. Vincent's Hospital, where several hundred people are being treated right now. Rose, give us an update if you would.
Yes, Paula, I'm actually right here on 8th Avenue, and right over my left shoulder, you would see the Twin Towers on any other night clearly, but tonight there's nothing. It's completely dark. I spent most of the day about 2 blocks from there on the top floor of a building that's just north of the World Trade Center. From there, we could see people rushing to the windows as fire was billowing out of the top of the building where the first airplane hit. People were rushing to the windows. They were taking clothes. One thing looked like a blanket that they were waving. And then suddenly there was an explosion, and you saw folks start to jump out the front window of the building and plunge. I saw at least 6 people do this. Folks were pushing each other. Some people were screaming for help and then just falling out. There was chaos on the ground. You could see emergency workers rushing to the scene of the building. Right now it's pretty quiet behind me, but this is an emergency route right over here, 8th Avenue. It's a straight shot from the World Trade Center uptown, and we've been watching emergency vehicles rushing right by us into the hospital that's right up the street.
Rose, I want to make a clarification now. The police chief earlier reported that they believe there were people alive, and most people interpreted that as alive in the wreckage of the World Trade Center. The police commissioner is issuing clarifications that says they believe there are people alive in nearby buildings downtown, not the Trade Center. Once again, neither officials at the Pentagon or officials here in the city can confirm the magnitude of the tragedy witnessed here in New York City and in Washington today. But once again, the mayor says the statistics will be horrendous and the number of deaths will be very, very high. It's time to go back to Washington now, and Wolf.
Thank you, Paula. We're getting some new information now from our Susan Candiotti in Miami. She's reporting that the FBI has begun the process, or will soon begin the process, of executing search warrants in more than one location in South Florida, including what she says are the homes and post office boxes of several individuals. This is in response, Susan Candiotti is reporting, to information gleaned from the investigation into today's terrorist attacks in New York and here in Washington. One source tells Susan this: we're looking at South Florida ties to some of the people we're looking at. That's because, she says, authorities are basing their investigation on the passenger manifests of these hijacked airliners, 4 of them today, and they're taking information from other sources as well. We'll be following this. One additional note, she says a search will also be done in Daytona, Florida. Susan Candiotti will be joining us shortly. I do want to report once again what she's saying, that the FBI has begun the process of search warrants in South Florida as well as Daytona. Susan is now on the phone with us. Susan, tell us, give us a perspective. What exactly do you know is going on?
It's my understanding, according to a law enforcement source, Wolf, that the FBI is in the process of executing search warrants. That is to say, in the process of putting the paperwork together. The execution of them may not begin until the morning or early morning hours. What they are going to be executing these search warrants are homes, as well as some may only be post office boxes, I am told. They are basing the information on the request for a search warrant on information coming from passenger manifests of the aircraft involved, among other information they have by talking to various other sources. I am told, quote, we are looking at South Florida ties to some of the people that we're looking at. When I asked if they are looking at names on the manifest that may only turn out to be passengers, I was told, no, we are basing our search warrants on more information than that. They are looking at more than one location, I am told, in South Florida, as well as other locations in Central and or North Florida, including Daytona Beach. Wolf?
Susan Candiotti in Miami, thank you very much. And our Jonathan Karl, our congressional correspondent, has been talking with members of Congress who also have been receiving intelligence briefings. John, tell us what you're hearing now.
Well, Wolf, I'm outside the Capitol Police headquarters here on Capitol Hill, where Attorney General and also the FBI director have both been briefing about 75 members of Congress. I can tell you that in general, the one bit of information here is that they believe, according to the Attorney General told members of Congress that these were teams of 3 to 5 operating on each one of these planes, and that they believe that in each one of the cases where they have direct information, they were armed only with knives. Besides that, members of Congress I've spoken to that were in this briefing expressing frustration at the lack of information. They wanted to know, about the plane that went down outside of Pittsburgh. They wanted to know where was that plane's destination. They wanted to know more about the nationalities of those that were involved with this attack. And they said they got essentially no new information on any of that. But again, the one thing that they did get out of this was that, according to the Attorney General, what the Attorney General told the members of Congress here, those were teams of 3 to 5 operating on each one of those planes. Now, there will be another extraordinary briefing of law enforcement officials tomorrow at 12:30 on the floor of the House of Representatives, because every member of the House and Senate, for that matter, obviously wants to get briefed, wants to get these questions answered. So there will be a closed briefing on the floor of the House, we are told, tomorrow at 12:30 with law enforcement officials.
Jonathan Karl, so many questions and still so few answers. Thanks so much for joining us. And I want to bring in now the former UN ambassador, United States ambassador to the United Nations and Energy Secretary during the Clinton administration, Bill Richardson, who was one of the last high-ranking U.S. officials to actually go to Afghanistan and meet with Taliban leaders. He met with them in late 1997. And also Julie Serz, a former U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency analyst, a specialist on the Taliban and Afghanistan and Osama bin Laden. And first to you, Secretary Richardson, what is your sense right now, knowing the Taliban, knowing Osama bin Laden, hearing these reports, what do you believe that Osama bin Laden was responsible for this?
My gut feeling, Wolf, is yes, that every indicator, which is similar to the bombing of our 2 embassies, to the USS Cole, the modus operandi, the 3 to 5, that most likely it is Osama bin Laden. I believe that intelligence is also indicating that he's now in Afghanistan. If that is the case, I think this new policy makes sense, and that is that any nation that harbors such a terrorist would also be the beneficiary of a retaliatory effort by the United States. My view, again, is that the Taliban have been playing this game, that we contain him. When I met with him, they said he's not perpetrating any terrorist acts, he's under our control. That is not the case. He operates in a wide network throughout Afghanistan, other countries. I think it is critically important that if he is in Afghanistan, that he be turned over, that he be brought to a swift retaliatory effort.
Julie Serz, you're a former DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency analyst specializing in Afghanistan and the Taliban and Osama bin Laden. What's your take?
I agree with Ambassador Richardson and the other experts that I know you've had on throughout the day that, yes, all the indicators do seem to point to Osama bin Laden being responsible for this attack. And yes, I also agree with Ambassador Richardson that the Taliban, and as the President said, share at least equal responsibility in this act if that does turn out to be the case that bin Laden is behind it. Taliban officials have claimed after the 1998 embassy bombings, after the Cole attack, that bin Laden could somehow be controlled by them, and I think this shows, if anything, that they're working with him, that they're cooperating with him, that's perhaps even the best way to understand bin Laden's organization, that it includes not just bin Laden and this extremist network worldwide, but is very much helped by the safe haven the Taliban provide, and even by the assistance of some neighboring countries, including particularly Pakistan. I think it needs to be said now. It's something many of us American officials have believed, and private experts on the subject as well.
Well, let me ask Ambassador Richardson, do you believe Pakistan should share some of the responsibility if, in fact, Osama bin Laden is proven to have been responsible for these attacks?
Yes, there's no question that the Pakistanis have a lot of influence on the Taliban. When I visited the Taliban, it was arranged by the Pakistanis, who had have a lot of leverage over them, territorial, financial. I think it's important that the international community rally behind the United States. NATO, nations like Pakistan, others that have influence with the Taliban in Central Asia. This should be an international responsibility. This is an attack on the international community, not just the United States. The United Nations needs to be involved. We need to have a multinational effort, but the United States should lead that. If they are the perpetrators, they should be the recipients. The Osama bin Laden organization, the whole network of a very strong retaliatory strike.
All right, Ambassador Bill Richardson, Julie Sears, I want to thank both of you for joining us. We have to leave it right there. And Paula, before we go to you, just to recap the headline from our Jonathan Karl, reporting on a briefing that the Attorney General John Ashcroft gave members of Congress, that the U.S. government now believes teams of 3 to 5 individuals carrying knives commandeered those 4 airliners earlier today, destroying them and themselves in the process. Paula?
Thanks, Wolf. The city here is still paralyzed by the impact of the terrorist attacks here earlier today, and somewhat chilled by what the mayor of the city has just shared with us. He said he believes the fatality numbers will be horrendous, and that they will be, in quote, very high indeed. We do need to clarify one thing that the police commissioner told us was misinterpreted coming out of that news conference that he just held with the mayor. We were led to believe that police officials thought that there were people alive in the World Trade Center. That apparently is not the case. The police commissioner is now reiterating that he believes there are indeed people alive in nearby buildings downtown. Now, once again, to understand the impact of these 2 explosions. The crashes happened 18 minutes apart. Within an hour and a half, both the North Tower and the South Tower, the World Trade Center, had collapsed. An adjoining building collapsed at 6 o'clock tonight. There's a lot of debris in the area. Rescuers cannot get into the World Trade Center perimeter. We can confirm, though, 600 people are being treated in area hospitals. We're going to go to Greg Clarkin right now, who is at St. Vincent's Hospital, where a large number of those victims were taken. Greg?
Hi there, Paula. We are indeed very close to St. Vincent's Hospital, and this is one of the trauma and triage centers in Lower Manhattan. They tell us they have treated about 327 patients. They have 3 fatalities at St. Vincent's. Now, here to help us sort it out and describe what it was like inside St. Vincent's is Dr. Andrew Feldman. He's the chief of sports medicine, and he has been at work at St. Vincent's now for upwards of 10 hours. Doctor, can you give us some sense of the type of injuries we saw first off in St. Vincent's?
Well, there's a whole host of injuries, anything you'd see in any other kind of major trauma. Obviously, a lot of broken bones, cuts and bruises, but a lot of blunt trauma, chest trauma, head trauma, things like that.
And what type of infrastructure, what type of system was in place to kind of deal with the influx of victims that we saw today?
Well, at St. Vincent's, we're a level 1 trauma center, which means we're prepared to do this type of stuff. We take care of a lot of accident victims in New York, and we have for many years. And I'm very proud of the staff and the other doctors in the facility for how they handled this. But basically, we are really set up for this type of environment.
Have they given you any kind of expectations, what's in store for you tomorrow? Any kind of heads up, any tips to what you might be in for?
It's basically more of the same, because obviously there's thousands and thousands of people to dig out, and all of them are going to have some sort of an injury. And basically, since we're so close to the World Center, that they'll be coming our way.
And the injuries will shift to a different type, correct, as they start to pull people out of here?
Well, I mean, the longer people are buried, I think the more severe the injury, and there's going to be a lot of smoke and gas inhalation, and people are going to be dealing with that in the next 12 to 24 hours, I believe.
Dr. Feldman, thanks very much for joining us. And Paula, that was the view of one gentleman who's inside St. Vincent's. Again, they've treated 327 people, 3 fatalities. Paula, back to you.
Thanks so much, Greg. We can confirm that there is a desperate plea for New Yorkers to donate blood, and every indication is that New Yorkers are doing their best to live up to that challenge. And there's some hospitals, lines wrapped around the block of people waiting in line to give blood. But indeed, there is still a shortage, and the city very much wants folks who are capable of donating blood to do just that. Right now, I'm going to check in with Susan Lasovich, who is out in Weehawken, New Jersey. Susan, if you would, try to set the scene for our viewers who weren't with us earlier today to help them understand, after the 2 towers crash, the drama of people trekking out of the city with roads closed around them, bridges closed, and how they made their way across the river to New Jersey.
Paula,
It was just a surreal scene. Hoboken, New Jersey, which is where I live, is a very busy town that is directly opposite the financial district. You have buses, ferries going to the World Financial Center, which is across the street from where the World Trade Center once stood, and the PATH train, which runs underneath the Hudson River. The first stop in New York City is the World Financial Center. Instead, today, the ferries were transporting people who were fleeing